Twitter Files 7, the Hunter Biden cover-up. It's here. We knew it happened, but we didn't know the extent to which the FBI and others in the media were involved in it. We're going to go into the full thread and read through it together for the first time. But before we do, I want to talk about things called prior restraint. Very important concept, as well as another concept in the law that's actually a criminal charge under 18 U.S. Code 241. Where we talk about prosecuting conspirators. But in free speech, in the free speech conversation, the First Amendment and all of the cases that emerged out of the First Amendment, there's one concept that is very important to our discussion, in particular about the Twitter files. And we're always asking ourselves whether the government is an actor or whether the government is enabling an actor to suppress our rights. Is the government the actor who is suppressing our constitutional rights, or is the government enabling an actor to suppress our constitutional rights? We have to ask ourselves because we want to see that because we believe there's an actionable claim here. Remember, the First Amendment told us that Congress shall make no law impacting the free speech. Our free speech. I'm trying to get the actual, here it is. The First Amendment says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech. But it says Congress. And so we have to ask ourselves if the FBI was in fact a state actor. And as we just talked about in Twitter Files 6, it certainly looks like they are. But now we're talking about in Twitter Files 7, another area of free speech law. This is called prior restraints. Here, prior restraint is a government action, so again, government, that prohibits speech or other expression before the speech happens, right? If you say something after you said it and you try to limit that speech, of course, that can be a type of censorship. But what if you try to stop it before somebody even mutters it? It's a whole different game. Okay, Trump can post something on Twitter and then Twitter can react and say, that's incitement. And then ban a sitting president off the platform. But what if they were to stop him before he even pressed the send button? What does that look like? Prior restraint typically happens in a few ways. It may be a statute or a regulation, so a law that requires a speaker to get a permit or a license. You know, you can't go out there and talk about abortion unless you get your abortion card or something, right? That would be a prior restraint. But it can also be a judicial injunction that prohibits speech. It can also be done by a third way, where the government outright prohibits a certain type of speech. Courts typically disfavor prior restraint and often find it to be unconstitutional. Oh, you're kidding me. Yeah, because we favor speech, used to in this country. Prior restraint of freedom of the press. What happens if you try to shut the press up? For example, if they're sharing a Hunter Biden story, hypothetically. If you were the New York Post and you were the press and you were publishing something and the government, right, a government action as a state actor by the government leaning on Twitter by saying you're ordered to do these things, then what would that mean? It would mean that the government through the FBI was pushing its pressure on Twitter to censor the press. Okay, we're just following the bouncing ball down the chain. They don't escape immunity just because there's a bunch of people in between them and them. Prior restraint of the press. The issue often pops up where a state seeks to prevent a news publication from publishing something. There was a case called Neer versus Minnesota. There was a law in that case that authorized prior restraint of a news publication. Supreme Court said, nope, can't do that. Law said the newspaper can't talk about this. But they said this could be appropriate in certain situations. Okay, this is back in 1931. So the law says, well, you can't talk about, supporting the Nazis or something. Supreme Court said unconstitutional. It can only be allowed where the nation is at war or when the speech would incite violence. Okay, so we have some limitations on prior restraint. Did the Hunter Biden story, were we at war with anybody? No, they were at war with Trump, but that doesn't count. Would the Hunter Biden story incite violence? No. Okay, so that none of those things apply. How about New York Times versus the United States? 1971 case. The U.S. government, tried to stop the New York Times and the Washington Post from publishing government documents. But the Supreme Court came out and said the government's claims of, quote, security, because they always say that, national security, because they're a bunch of liars, did not trump the newspaper's freedom of press as guaranteed by the First Amendment. WAPO and New York Times wanted to publish. Government said, don't do it. Supreme Court said, sorry, publish it. The court held that in order to support prior restraint, the government needs to prove that the publication would cause inevitable, direct, or immediate danger to the United States. Okay, so those are prior restraints. Unconstitutional, unconstitutional, unconstitutional. Could the Hunter Biden story be censored, be prior restrained before anybody even talked about it? Sure, I guess, if it was during a time of war, if it was something that might lead to inevitable, direct, or immediate danger to the United States. But obviously, none of that is part of this story unless Hunter Biden had nuclear codes or really really compromising information to our federal government. Maybe that's why they wanted to suppress it. But if that's the case, if they're bringing this up, if they're bringing their censorship up on a basis of national security, well, that makes it even more publicly useful. That means we really want to know now what Hunter Biden did, because it very necessarily means that it implicates U.S. national security. We know about it. We want to know the rest of it. All right, so that is prior restraint. That is a very important concept as we go in to the Twitter files, which we will do right now. Twitter Files 7, the FBI and the Hunter Biden laptop. How the FBI and the intelligence community discredited factual information about Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings, both after and before the New York Post revealed the contents of his laptop on October 14th, 2022. Lot to unpack here. October 14th, obviously just a couple weeks away from one of the most important elections of all of our lifetimes. And the New York Post drops a bombshell. October surprise, Hunter Biden's laptop is true, it's confirmed, and it's disgusting. It's going to be a big problem for the Biden campaign. But the FBI, the government, discredited factual information about it before they even published it. Almost like they were trying to restrain it or to discredit it. Michael Shellenberger continues. He tells us that in Twitter Files 6, we saw the FBI relentlessly seek to exercise influence over Twitter, including over its content, its users, and its data. And we covered that entirely here. In Twitter Files 7, Shellenberger says we now present evidence pointing to an organized effort by representatives of the intelligence community aimed at senior executives at news and social media companies, all to discredit leaked information about Hunter Biden before and after it was published. Now, the story begins December 2019 when a Delaware computer store owner named John Paul, also known as JP Mack, he contacts the FBI about a laptop Hunter Biden had left with him. December 9th, 2019, the FBI issues a subpoena for and takes over Hunter Biden's laptop. This is a bill. You can see it says bill to Hunter Biden. Phone numbers on there along with his iCloud address. Quote number 7469. It says the item is item number 1, quantity 1, description 1, laptop, unit price $85. It's a laptop repair bill. Guess who signed on that bill? Looks like the signature of the person who got the bill. Presumably Hunter Biden. Looks like RHB maybe. But I can't tell. So that is the bill. FBI sends a subpoena over, coming from the United States District Court, subpoena to testify before a grand jury out of the District of Delaware, which is conveniently where Joe Biden resides. It says, dear so-and-so, name had been redacted. It says, you are commanded to appear before the United States District Court down over here at the Federal Building in Wilmington, Delaware. Time and place, December 17th, 2019. Now it says you must bring along with you the following information. Look at attachment A. Now it says a subpoena, but it's not a subpoena to actually testify vocally. It's only to return some documents. Clerk of the court signs off on this, and it makes its way into the laptop owner's hands, which is now the MacBook Repair Center. Attachments are the Apple MacBook laptop computer with the serial number, that's Hunter's, and a Western Digital external hard drive, with another serial number. So obviously the Mac is presumably Hunter Biden's. Now, I don't know what the Western Digital hard drive was. I don't know if he if Hunter Biden dropped off the hard drive along with the MacBook, or if the MacBook came by itself and the government is just asking for the hard drive in conjunction with the MacBook. Don't know. So the FBI knows, right? We can pretty much presume this is real. If this is not real, then the FBI is probably not going to be looking for it. So FBI sends a subpoena. Everybody knows it's real. This is all taking place. Just so we're aware, the FBI then knows, okay, as an agency, that this is probably real because they've investigated it. They've already sent over a subpoena for it. So anytime after this fact, right, presumably the agency knows it's legitimate because they sent a subpoena for it. And, you know, I guess they would have spoken to Hunter about it, maybe Dad about it, and done their due diligence before they just start firing off subpoenas, right? Right. Now, by August 2020, almost a year later, Mac Isaac still had not heard back from the FBI. Like, perfect. This guy just shut up. We got the hard drive back. Man, you think we escaped this one? Okay, just let it ride. Don't say anything. Mac hasn't heard back from the FBI, even though he had discovered evidence of criminal activity. He's poking around that hard drive. He's like, this guy's a creep show, man. So he emails Rudy Giuliani, who was also under FBI surveillance at the time, because they just investigate everybody. In early October, Giuliani gives it to the New York Post. Giuliani's got a copy of it. The New York Post publishes this article, Biden's secret emails. Dun, dun, dun. We covered it all here. We spent a lot of time on this. We talked about Tony Bobulinski. We read through Rosemont Seneca. We looked at RHB, RHB1, RHB2, all the different permutations and LLCs. We covered it all. Now, Twitter shut the whole thing down. Shortly before 7 p.m. on October 13th, Hunter Biden's lawyer, George, emails the Mac store owner, JP. Hunter and Masiris, the lawyer, had just learned from the New York Post that its story would be published the next day. Oh, man. Email comes in from Hunter's lawyer, George Masiris, October 13, 2020. Subject, George Masiris' contact information. It says, hi, John Paul, the Mac store owner. It says, thank you for speaking with me tonight, sir. As I indicated, I am a lawyer for Hunter Biden. I appreciate you reviewing your records on this matter. Thank you. Lawyer sends an email. They go, crap, the story's coming out. Now, at 9:22 p.m., FBI agent Elvis Chan sends 10 documents to Twitter's then head of site integrity, Yoel Roth, through Teleporter, a one-way communications channel from the FBI to Twitter. They built in their own little shoot. They just shoot stuff right over to each other. And we're still following this time frame here. Shortly before 7 p.m. October 13th, Hunter's team gets wind of this. 7 p.m. 2 hours later, 2.5 hours later, FBI's involved. Elvis sends out a letter October 13th, the same day. They know the story is being published the next day. Elvis Chan says this. Twitter folks, heads up. I'll be sending a teleporter link for your download 10 of documents here. It is not spam, exclamation point. Okay, act on this. Please confirm receipt when you get it. Thanks. Yoel responds 2 minutes later because Yoel responds quickly when his FBI handlers call him. He says at 6:24 p.m. October 13th, received and downloaded. Thanks. Got it. So it sounds like Elvis may be hitting the panic button. The next day, October 14th, New York Post runs its story, explosive story, reveals the business dealings of Joe Biden, Hunter Biden. Every single fact in it was accurate, says Michael Schellenberger. Obviously true. And you didn't need to be somebody who was an ex-CIA, FBI, whatever, to figure it out. We were able to cobble that all together last year, 2 years ago, whenever we were talking about it, because the emails, the laptop, it was so extensive. You could see all of this in Garrett Ziegler's MarcoPoloUSA.org report. Everybody knew this, apparently, other than the FBI. And yet, within hours after this totally true and factually accurate story was released, Twitter and other social media companies censor the article, preventing it from spreading, and more importantly, undermining its credibility in the minds of many Americans. Many Americans never even heard about it. And those that did, what did they say in response? Oh, it's just Russian hacked. It's the Russian hacked materials. What? Joe Biden himself said that it was Russian disinformation. Lied to all of us. But why were they censoring it? Why is that, says Michael Shellenberger. What happened exactly? Well, on December 2nd, Matt Taibbi described the debate inside Twitter over its decision to censor a wholly accurate article. And we've talked all about that. They were debating this. They said, well, is it hacked materials? Can we put it under here and nuke it? No. Can we put it under here and nuke it? No. But they tried to do it. Shellenberger tells us, first, it's important to understand that Hunter Biden earned tens of millions of dollars in contracts with foreign businesses, including ones linked to China's government, for which Hunter offered no real work. Here's an overview by an investigative journalist called Peter Schweitzer. Now, of course, we'll play just a short bit of this. It's 10 minutes long. Please go follow Michael Shellenberger and, of course, Peter Schweitzer, who I was already following, of course.
Flow of funds. We also know that the people sending that money have very close relationships with the government. So in the case of China, for example, which I believe is the most troubling of the group of foreign donors, you can actually look on the Hunter Biden laptop and find the businessmen who secured these deals for Hunter Biden. There are four gentlemen that are named. If you look at those four gentlemen, each and every one of them has close ties to the highest levels of Chinese intelligence.
Yeah.
So, for example, one gentleman who he calls the super chairman, at the same time that Hunter Biden secures a deal with him that translates into about $20 million, that same Chinese businessman is business partners with the Vice Minister of State Security in China, who is responsible for foreign recruitments.
Yeah, and so Hunter Biden flew over there with Daddy Joe VP and got connected with all of the other Daddy VP's kids over there. It's like he went to a, VP kids conference or something. Got plugged in, made tens of millions of dollars, did nothing of value, and then committed a bunch of crimes with it on top of it. So follow Mr. Peter Schweitzer for more details on that and to listen to the rest of that clip. But let's carry on. Shellenberger says, and yet, during all of 2020, the whole year, the FBI and other law enforcement agencies repeatedly primed Yoel Roth to dismiss reports of the laptop as a Russian hack and leak operation. This is from a sworn declaration given by Roth in December of 2020. And we've already read this here. We went through this some time ago. Remember that the Republicans were suing the Republicans were suing Twitter, and this is Twitter and the Twitter's lawyers responding. Yeah, we write on behalf of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, Brandon, and others. The Tea Party Patriots Foundation filed this against us. Oh, this is a different one. So it's the same thing. They got sued by a bunch of people. Yoel Roth at the bottom of this submits a declaration. Here it is. Actually, it's going to be probably at the very bottom. This is a big fat filing. So Roth, he submitted one. There it is. My name is Yoel Roth. This declaration is based upon my personal knowledge. I run site integrity. A lot of people come. Our team reviews reports about hacking incidents. We flag content. Twitter regularly enforces its policy. We have routine conversations when evaluating these things. Here, since 2018, we just listened to Elvis Chan. I have had regular meetings with the ODNI, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, industry peers about election security. He's the other side of the coin. Elvis Chan was saying, I was meeting with all of these people, our private partners. Yoel Roth's on the receiving end. During these weekly meetings, the federal law enforcement agencies communicated that they expected hack and leak operations by state actors, that it might occur likely in October, right before the presidential election. I was told in these meetings that the intelligence community expected that individuals associated with political campaigns would be subject to hacking attacks, and that material obtained through those hacking attacks would likely be disseminated over social media platforms, including Twitter. These expectations of hack and leak operations were discussed throughout 2020. I also learned in these meetings that there were rumors of a hack and leak operation involving Hunter Biden. Okay, so the FBI, this entire time, in other words, they basically knew this was coming. Remember, they had the laptop since December 2019, probably well before then, or they at least knew it was real because that's when the subpoena got sent in. So this entire time, there's a book by an ASU professor, former, called Robert Cialdini. The book's called Persuasion. There's all sorts of books on how to persuade somebody after the fact, or the art of influence, right? How to influence somebody after the fact. But how do you persuade them? How do you pre-butt an argument? Well, in this case, you just have FBI agents go and beat Yoel Roth's head over this for about 6 months until the story actually leaks in October. And you turn around and you say, Yoel, we told you it was going to be coming for 8 months, 9 months, 10 months. Guess what? Here it is. On October 14th, Yoel says, I learned from the media coverage that the New York Post had published articles that allegedly had the hard drive. The site integrity team determined that it came through hacking, whatever, and decided to nuke it. And so you can go and, of course, read the rest of that. Back over to Schellenberger. He tells us that they did the same thing to Facebook. They went and had weekly meetings with them too, according to Zuckerberg. The FBI basically came to us and was like, hey, you should be on high alert. We thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in 2016, but oh man, there's going to be something similar to this. So just brace yourself. This is Mark Zuckerberg telling us about the FBI.
The background here is the FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team, and was like, hey, just so you know, like, you should be on high alert. We thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump of that's similar to that. The background,
and it's going to be the Hunter Biden stuff, except it's not even remotely similar to anything that the Russians did, which is largely inconsequential anyways, or people would say entirely inconsequential. In this case, though, it's perfectly legitimate. It's all entirely accurate. And the FBI is persuading. They are pre-butting. They're trying to spike the story before it even comes out. There were warnings, FBI warnings. Schellenberger asks, were the FBI warnings of a Russian hack and leak operation related to any new intel? No, they weren't. Through our investigations, we did not see any similar competing intrusions to what had happened in 2016. Elvis Chan admitted this during his depositions. State of Louisiana and Missouri are suing the Biden administration. Elvis Chan was somebody who got subpoenaed for a deposition. The judge granted it. The question to Elvis Chan: were hack and dump operations, Mr. Former Special Agent, were they discussed at these meetings? Or hack and leak operations? Elvis Chan says, oh yeah, of course they were. Well, tell me about what you discussed with them at the meetings. Elvis says, the context of hack and dump is what we, the FBI and CISA, what we're doing to prevent hack and dump operations. He says, so from the FBI side, I think I already relayed to you that we had Protective Voices Initiative. I can't remember the specifics, but CISA also discussed its cybersecurity awareness efforts as well as grants efforts and other things with the states. He says, all right, Elvis. He said, did anyone at these meetings tell the industry participants to expect a Russian hack and dump or a hack and leak operation before the election? Chan says, from my recollection, I remember that the FBI wanted that I or someone from the FBI warn the social media companies about the potential for a 2016 style DNC hack and dump. Okay, so you were communicating with them? Yeah, sort of. Well, what exactly did you say to the social media companies? What did you talk to them about? Well, basically what I just told you. So you said that there might be Russian hack and drop operations? Elvis says, so what I said was, although we have not seen any computer intrusions into national level political committees or election officials or presidential candidates at this time, we ask you to remain vigilant about the potential for hack and dump operations or something like that. In other words, we haven't seen a whole lot, but it could be coming. Okay. And so did you specifically refer to the 2016 operation? that targeted the Democrats and the DNCC. So this isn't even about Russians, right? This is also about Hillary's emails. Yeah. He says, I think I did. Yeah, I think I talked about Hillary's emails. I'm still pissed about that too. Okay. And did you provide any basis to these social media companies for thinking that something like that might be coming? All right. So the question is, you're petrified that somebody's going to hack your candidate's emails again. And so you use that as an example to these social media companies, right? You don't want somebody to hack your candidate's emails again, right? No, of course not. Okay. But is that the only reason you told them to be concerned, or is there new information? He says, my basis was it had happened once and it could happen again. Wow, that's brilliant. Okay, but did you have any other specific information other than it happened 4 years earlier? Like, you work at the FBI. Did you have anything else new? Gets an objection on that, but he answers. And Chan, Elvis, he says, through our investigations, we did not see any similar competing intrusions to what happened in 2016. So he was just living in his little fictional world. They just made this whole thing up again. Or it's their intentional creation, because it gives them all sorts of power and leverage to spike the ball on any misinformation, which is only information that they just don't like. So although from our standpoint, says Elvis, we had not seen anything, we specifically, in an abundance of caution, warned the companies in case they saw something that we did not. So we're just being cautious. Okay, so did you ask the companies if they had seen any attempts at any intrusions or unauthorized access? Like, okay, so you're not seeing anything that's telling you there's a problem. Did they see anything that's telling them there's a problem? He says, well, this is something that I regularly ask the companies in our meetings. He says, well, did you ask them in these meetings? Not at every meeting, but I believe I asked them at some meetings. Okay, this guy. So he's caught up already in this one question. This is something that I regularly ask in the course of our meetings, which means you do it every time. Do you do it in these meetings? Not at every meeting, but I believed at some. Okay, so then it's not regular and it's not in the ordinary course. All right, so it's a typical FBI. All right, so this is their admissions that they are communicating back and forth, and they're not even seeing anything, right? They're just pulling it up out of their derrieres. Schellenberger says, indeed, Twitter executives repeatedly reported very little Russian activity because there wasn't any, except in their own minds, where they've got Russophobia. On September 24th, 2020, Twitter told the FBI that it removed 345, quote, largely inactive accounts linked to previous coordinated Russian hacking attempts. They had little reach and low follower accounts. Here's an email. Update on Russia accounts to Elvis. Dated September 24th, 11:30 in the morning. Dear Elvis, I hope you're well over there at the FBI. We love you. We want to let you know about actions that we plan to publicly announce in the next hour or so. As you're aware, we're working with you and Facebook to permanently suspend accounts that we can reliably attribute to Russia. Thank you for your ongoing cooperation and information sharing. We are removing 2 distinct networks of accounts that we can reliably attribute to state-linked entities in Russia. Our investigations are ongoing. The first network of accounts, totaling approximately 345, were largely inactive and were linked to previous coordinated Russian hacking attempts. Most of the content shared by these accounts expressed views designed to advance Russia's geopolitical interests. Great. Sounds okay. Good job. Well done. The second network of accounts, totaling approximately 10, purported to be associated with a website called United World International, which publishes a large range of content about current global and U.S. political issues. Links to UN World will be blocked under unsafe links policy detailed here. The accounts included in this action, quote, had little reach and low follower accounts. We plan to send you the FTF information and conclusion. Elvis, he says, thanks at the bottom, exclamation point. Thanks for the heads up. Regards, Elvis, supervisory special agent for the FBI. So they are just working together. Okay, beautiful. Now, Twitter debunked false claims by journos of foreign influence on its platform. So Twitter is saying this isn't a problem. Okay, you guys think it's a giant problem. It's not a problem. September, we got rid of a couple of these accounts. They're pretty minor. couple hundred followers, low follower counts. And there's also other links where they say, no, there's not really any foreign influence here at all. Somebody said on MSNBC News, said, we haven't seen any evidence to support that claim. Somebody else said, our review shows a small-scale domestic troll effort. Okay, very minor. Elvis sends this letter. June 2nd, 3:30 in the afternoon. Elvis to Yoel Roth. He says, all. Out of an abundance of caution, I wanted to reach out to you about this news story. NBC News shares this. Twitter takes down Washington protests disinformation bot. Elvis says to Twitter, he says, the second part of the article focuses on the hashtag DC Blackout campaign and its potential to being driven by foreign-controlled bots. Anything we should be aware of concerning this topic? Thanks. Okay, so it's like Elvis Chan is like his supervisor, you know. Anything we should be aware of concerning this topic? All right. So Yoel responds. He says, short time later, 1 minute later, 1 minute. I told you, man. Yoel is like on high alert here. You can see 3:29. Yoel responds at 3:30. It's pretty fast. I got to hand it to him. That's a fast response. He types that whole thing out in 1 minute. He says, hi, Elvis. We haven't seen any evidence to support that claim. Our review thus far shows a small-scale domestic troll effort that was amplified in some creative ways by real people, but not a significant bot or foreign angle. Okay, so why don't you just calm down over there, Elvis? Take it easy, brother. Just sit down and have yourself a drink and just take it easy for 2 minutes, okay? Not everything is going to ruin American democracy. Good Lord. He says, so just take it easy. Okay. Now, you saw this other email. This is what Elvis was reading, and he got very upset about it, so he had to fire it off to his Twitter employees. Schellenberger continues. He says, after the FBI asks about a WAPO story on another alleged foreign influence in a pro-Trump tweet, Roth says the article makes a lot of insinuations, but we saw no evidence that that was the case here. Here's the story that's problematic. Black voters are being targeted in disinfo campaigns, echoing the Russian playbook from 2016. It's like, They're even recycling headlines now. All right, so 4 years ago, Russia operatives used social media to exacerbate the thing, and all of that was being recycled, right? Just over and over, copy and paste, copy and paste. Letter goes out to Elvis Chan from somebody else at the FBI. You can see from FBI so-and-so at FBI.gov, Monday, August 31st, 2020. Election is closing in. Elvis gets a letter. It says, hi, Elvis. I'm another FBI agent, and they targeted this account specifically at went dem to rep. Okay, so shout out to at went dem to rep means this person moved from a Democrat to a Republican, presumably, which is illegal in this country, and the execution penalty must be applied. So another FBI agent who got done playing Where's Waldo and working on Lego sets decided to read some news. They came across this Washington Post article called Race Divisions Highlighted Disinformation. So sends a letter to Elvis, goes, oh my gosh, they're racists in America. Who can I talk to? Elvis works over there on Twitter. Hi, Elvis. I came across this article from the Washington Post that referenced Twitter's removal of an account. According to the article, it says that African Americans challenge allegations of racism. At the time of suspension, was Twitter able to attribute this account to any particular country? At the time of this suspension, was Twitter able to attribute any of this account activity to a particular country? In addition, did the aforementioned account or any of the other suspended accounts post similar messages related to conventions, upcoming elections? Thank you in advance. So this person's just like fishing for foreign. She's like, oh, please be the Russians. Please be the Russians. Please be the Russians. Elvis gets another one, a response from Yoel. Yoel Roth says, hey, Elvis, thanks for checking on this. I can confirm that the account in question is domestic. The article makes a lot of insinuations about foreign interference, but we saw no evidence of that and that was the case here. And in fact, a lot of strong evidence pointing in the opposite direction. So yes, we know that the FBI, they really want the foreign interference stuff so that it gives them a little bit more jurisdiction so that they can go after things, right? Rather than just censoring Americans' perfectly legal political speech. They're like, we have to find something. We've been screaming that there is something. So can we please find something? So FBI is digging for this. Was that account Russian? Feels Russian. Kind of felt Russian to us. 18 from Schellenberger says it's not the first time that Twitter and Twitter's Roth have pushed back against the FBI. January 2020, Roth insisted and resisted FBI efforts to get Twitter to share data outside of the normal search warrant process. These FBI agents were just asking for Twitter to voluntarily give them your data. No warrants, nothing like that. And shout out to Yoel for not buckling immediately on this one. We have a letter coming in December 20th, 2019. FBI is in possession of the laptop at this time. It says, "Hi, blank," coming from Elvis Chan. It says, "My colleagues at the fort had a query for you. Well, I provided it to you below. They said, a few years ago, Twitter said that they would no longer provide their data feed to members of the intelligence community. My colleagues wanted to know if that policy has changed or if you would be willing to change it because we really want your data. My colleagues are currently contracting with a vendor from an analytic tool for open source intelligent, it's only publicly available data. The commercial version of this tool includes a Twitter data feed. However, my feed was disabled. The feed was disabled because the vendor said they didn't want to violate their TOS with Twitter. My colleagues were wondering if Twitter would be open to revising its service to allow this vendor to continue having access to the Twitter feed. My colleagues are happy to meet in person to discuss this if you would like. Can we please have a backdoor to your systems?" This is the FBI in America asking Twitter for a backdoor to their systems in this country. In email, written in December. Almost 3 years to the day. December 20th, 2019. Unbelievable. They respond. Elvis, he says, "Hey, as discussed, here's my suggested response. Of course, feel free to edit this or tweak this." Says, "At this point, we don't think a call directly with your colleague at the fort is the best path. As a rule, we're not able to directly discuss data licensing relationship with third parties, such as the customers of our data customers, both due to confidentiality reasons and limited information." So he just copies and pastes this whole thing. "We also have a long-standing policy prohibiting the use of data for surveillance. Ultimately, we want to be good partners to the government to help combat our shared threats, but the best path for the NSA or any government to request that information is in accordance with the valid legal process. Thanks, Yoel." All right. So some lawyer wrote that up. Or maybe he wrote it. I don't know who wrote it, but that's a nice little blurb, right? It's like, here's our policy. It's a policy response. January 7th, 2020. So did this email come in? Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, so January 7th. The first email came in December 20th. Response backs so they're really working on this. Okay, so that took about 17 days for them to come up with this response, and it's still just a draft. So they're working on sending that back. Pressure is growing with inside Twitter. There's a letter to Yoel from the director of philanthropy out of Twitter. He says, holy crap on this one. He says, "I definitely agree with the caution here." Okay, so they're all being very careful with this word. "We have seen a sustained, if uncoordinated, effort by the IC to push us to share more information and to change our API policies. They are probing and pushing everywhere they can, including by whispering to congressional staff. We should stay connected and keep a solid front against these efforts. My sense from the exchange below is that Elvis is sending a message that he was asked to, but that he doesn't feel ownership of it, and a polite discussion will suffice to answer the mail from here." So these guys are feeling the pressure, okay? Like objectively, their interpretation of this, they are pushing everywhere they can because it's the federal stinking government. It's the FBI. Do you know which commercial provider is being referenced here by the clues that are offered? Do we feel like there is any additional guidance we can give to these companies that could clarify our rules and minimize their efforts to point back at our API rules when they get pressure from the government? Okay, so these third-party providers are now facing the pressure from the FBI. They don't have any answers. They say, go talk to Twitter, man. We can only use the API access that they give us. Maybe we can just tell them, right? It seems that Dataminr has got that message clearly, but we keep getting additional queries from elsewhere. Carlos Monge. So shout out to Carlos for standing up and sort of pushing back against the FBI there on that one a little bit. Time and again, the FBI asks Twitter for evidence of foreign influence, and Twitter responds that they're not finding anything. Yoel says, "Hello, FBI and team. They say, we're continuing to closely monitor the situation. We haven't seen anything that's in line with Senator Rubio's tweet. We've heard that the tweet may have been based on miscommunication between the Senate staff and Graphica, who they employ, but we don't have any specifics beyond that. Yoel says, at this stage, my team's findings have largely been that U.S.-based trolling groups are behind some of the on-platform violative activity and misleading information we've seen. Okay, trolling groups, like the amazing people over at, that one hacker, 4chan. That one hacker controls a big message board over there. And sometimes they, get into internet shenanigans. And so it may have been, that's it. It's just that famous hacker. While much of this violates our terms of service, that's it. It's just trolling. We haven't identified activity that we typically refer to you or even flag as interesting in the foreign influence context. We're still investigating some of the new developments this morning involving Anonymous, there it is, such as Op Death Eaters, which has been focused on a resurfacing of old Jeffrey Epstein-related court documents. It says, as always, if there's anything that you become aware of that might be interesting, please feel free to flag to us. Any source of signal on these issues is much appreciated. All right, so the FBI is freaking out over trolls. At least Yoel's got the good sense to just know they're just internet trolls. FBI, take it easy. He's got a little experience. But despite Twitter's pushback, the FBI repeatedly requests information from Twitter that Twitter has already made clear that it will not share outside information outside of legal channels. From Yoel to other people at the FBI, a big slew of names here. It says, hi, so-and-so, sorry about the delay. In terms of VoIP usage, so voice over IP, Twitter requires people registering an account to confirm either an email or phone number. And in some course of using Twitter, we require account holders confirm a number so that we can identify suspicious activity. As for the VPN, after consulting with so-and-so, we would need legal process to provide further info about the IPs, the subnets, the providers, etc. associated with the IPs from these accounts. Thanks. Man, these people. So the letter is in response to a July 9th request. FBI sent a letter. They said, hey, Yoel, thanks again for taking the time to look into this matter. We really appreciate it. When available, I had a few follow-up questions I'm hoping you can answer. Based on my understanding, this is the FBI speaking, Twitter observed some of the accounts using VPNs and VoIPs as a way to obfuscate their activities. Based on what you're seeing, would you be able to advise how the account holders were using VoIP on Twitter's platforms? And while I understand obtaining the actual VPN and IP addresses would likely require legal process, would Twitter be open to sharing which service providers those VPN addresses resolve to? Right, so just these little probes for little bits. Yoel says no. Go through the legal process. Then in July, FBI's Elvis Chan arranges for temporary top secret security clearances for Twitter executives so that the FBI can share information about threats to the upcoming elections. The FBI deputized Twitter employees. Email, July 15th, 12:09 p.m. To Yoel Roth from Elvis Chan. All. Since I brought up the security clearances during our call, I don't think we have anyone at Twitter who has a permanent security clearance. Please correct me if I'm wrong. What I would propose is that 30 days out from the election, we get you temporary clearances. You get to pick who they would be. Let me know what you think. Thanks. Regards. Elvis Chan. So giving, I guess, whoever, pick anybody, pick whoever you want, to give extra security clearances at Twitter. Doesn't even matter if it's Yoel or Vijaya or Longcon, Conlon, or any of them. They're all in this special privileged access status because they're working with the FBI to censor America. So if we go back to state actors, this is an actual power, a privilege of the state that has now been handed over. You get special access, boy. This is really special. It's temporary, but it's top secret security clearance. There is no division now between private and public at all. They are actually being deputized as extensions of the government. On August 11th, the FBI's Chan shares information with Twitter's Roth relating to the Russian hacking organization called APT28 through the FBI secure one-way communications channel called Teleporter. We have emails going out. August 11th, 2022, Elvis Chan sends a letter over to Yoel about information. He says, hey, in advance of this week's meeting, I'm going to be sending you documents through the FBI application called Teleporter. You're going to get a link from noreply@teleporter01.org, which will expire in 24 hours. Please download the documents when you get a chance. The documents will denote the actors, so I'm providing them here. A, FT, FITF topic. B is the Russian hacking group. C is called Sandworm. We're going to be discussing A and B, but don't have anything additional for C at this point. The documents will not denote the actors, so I'm providing them here. APT28, Sandstorm. FITF topic. All right. So all of that is now going over. Elvis sends another letter. I've got more information to share with you via Teleporter. You'll see an email from it shortly so you can download the document. Thanks. All right. So 2 separate emails through Teleporter. Yoel sat down with this woman called Kara Swisher. And he explains to her, yeah, we were getting these emails and I knew about this Russian hacking group called APT28. And when it did come off, when I did hear it, every single one of my alarm bells went off. Here's Yoel.
There was smoke. We learn about DC leaks, and we learn about the intersection between APT28, a unit of Russian military intelligence, a hacking group. And so the morning of the Hunter Biden story in the New York Post happens, and it was weird, right? We didn't know what to believe. We didn't know what was true. There was smoke.
We did.
And ultimately, for me, it didn't reach a place where I was comfortable removing this content from Twitter. But it set off every single one of my finely tuned APT28 hack and leak campaign alarm bells.
So it looked possibly problematic.
Everything about it looked like a hack and leak. We learned about DC.
It looked like it. And he had been persuaded. He had been convinced to run with this story because he had been meeting with the FBI for a long time. August 2020, FBI's Chan asks Twitter, does anyone there have top secret security clearance? When someone mentions to him Jim Baker, Chan responds, oh yeah, I don't know how I forgot him. An odd claim given Chan's job is to monitor Twitter, not to mention that they work together at the FBI. Here's what this letter looks like. From Elvis Chan, Wednesday, August 26, 2:43 p.m. Copied Laura. Elvis says, hi all. FITIF asked us to work with you to identify. Is there anyone at Twitter who currently holds a top secret security clearance so that they can get a briefing on something? I was told there might be a recent Twitter hire who still carries a top secret clearance. Can you let us know what you think? Thanks, Elvis. Hi, Elvis. Yes, we have 2 people. Would Jim Baker work? He used to work there with you guys. Remember? Let me know. Elvis says, oh, I don't know how I forgot Baker is there now. Yes, he would be perfect. Perfect. Yeah, he's one of us. Yeah, he's exactly what I'm looking for. Better than I even thought. I thought I was going to have a rando, not an insider. Can you put me in touch with him? We're trying to nail down a date and time to provide a briefing. I'm hoping there's going to be an unclassified tear line that can be shared as well. Thanks. Right. So you don't even have to be in the FBI to get FBI briefings. You just go work for Twitter. And that's what they're doing for us all. So that comes out. Elvis Chan is also in his deposition asked, how often do you talk to her about somebody? Maybe on a quarterly basis. Have you ever discussed with Mr. Strzok or Miss Page the prospect of a Russian hack and leak operation? Chan says no. The only investigation that I ever discussed with either of them was the Yahoo hack investigation. Okay, Elvis, do you know anyone who is associated with the Crossfire Hurricane investigation? Elvis says no, but I do want to add that during those meetings that I had with Mr. Strzok, Mr. Jim Baker, who was our general counsel at the time, would attend some of those meetings as well. This guy's everywhere. Mr. Baker would attend those meetings that you had with Mr. Strzok about the Yahoo hack? Yes, at least some of those. Who else would attend those meetings? He says just the three of them. It would be the three of them getting a status update from, they would be getting a case update from me. A case update about the Yahoo investigation. Question, of course, is who is Jim Baker? We've talked a lot about Jim Baker. We know Jim Baker very well because we read through his direct exam, his cross exam. He was highly involved in the Michael Sussman criminal trial. But if you're unfamiliar, here's some more. He was the former general counsel of the FBI, 2014, 2018, one of the most powerful people in the U.S. intel community. Moved in and out of government for 30 years. Worked at CNN, Bridgewater, a $140 billion asset management firm, also at Brookings. You see all of his credentials here. Deputy general, member board of directors, also teaches at Harvard now, right? He's just one of these guys. Very, very nice looking, curriculum vitae if you're a Fed. They probably love it. A lot of them probably salivating right now watching the show. Shout out to the FBI out there. Schellenberger continues. He says, as general of the FBI, Baker played a central role in making the case internally for an investigation of Donald Trump. And there's Michael Sussman himself, who sat down and met with Jim Baker. Baker wasn't the only senior FBI exec involved in the investigation. Don Burton, the former deputy chief of staff to James Comey, who initiated the investigation of Trump, also joined Twitter in 2019 as the director of strategy. As of 2020, Schellenberger tells us, there were so many former FBI employees, Boo alumni, working at Twitter that they had created their own private Slack channel and a crib sheet to onboard new FBI arrivals. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. They have a welcome Slack channel. It's perfect for the FBI. It's perfect. This is exactly what they'll do. Probably put their little cheat sheets right next to their Where's Waldo books. So here's what one of the messages look like. Welcome with 2 exclamation points. Hey, Jim. Whoa. 2 exclamation points. So excited you're here. I'm no longer the newest BU alum. Here is to the BU to Twitter translation chart I mentioned, adding Dawn so she can add and correct. Again, welcome. Super pumped to work with you again. Matt. So here's, all right. So here they give us the thing, the bureau. All right. BU bureau alum. That's what that is. BU is bureau, I'm guessing. Took me a minute. The thing they write here on their little cheat sheet chart. Climate survey. In the bureau, they called it AES. On Twitter, they call it Pulse. The intranet homepage. At the bureau, they call it the Red Side homepage. On Twitter, they call it Birdhouse. They call it FBI SharePoint, Virtual Academy, Trip. Payroll is NFC over there. Critical announcement are called DENS. A short summary is called a bluff. Bottom line up front. BLUF. And so they're just now communicating. They have a whole onboarding thing for all of the FBI agents. That's great. Now, efforts continue to influence Twitter's Yoel. He's at the top. In September 2020, Roth participated in an Aspen Institute, quote, tabletop exercise on a potential hack and dump operation relating to Hunter Biden. The goal was to shape how the media covered it and how social media carried it. They're planning this stuff. Here is the itinerary, evidently. This is in September 2020. We have some dates. This is out of control, what we're looking at. This is saying that in September 2020, they planned on an exercise, basically a workshop exercise. In the exercise, they have an itinerary for what the threat is going to look like. Here's how it unfolds in their fictional story. The Aspen Digital Hack and Dump Working Group, September 2020. Exercise. The Burisma leak. Day 1. Burisma. Day 1. Anonymous website. This is all fictional. Anonymous website, bidencrimes.info, and a Twitter account at Hunter Lulz, L-O-L-Z. They begin posting documents that purport to be from Burisma, tied to Hunter Biden. Splashed across the top of the site in English, it says, Joe Biden betrayed America for money. He'll do it again. Initially, the documents, mostly in Ukrainian, appear to be minutes of various Burisma board meetings, internal emails, and financial records. There is initially no sign of a smoking gun. But the notes from this exercise say the website appears to have been first registered in 2016. No ownership info is public. The Twitter account was created in 2014, oddly, just before Hunter joined the Burisma board. It has tweeted once and follows one person. Day 2, the Drudge Report links to Biden's crimes infos. The story is quickly picked up on fringe media and spread across social media sites. Wednesday, 2 days later, D+2. Fox and Friends discusses Biden crimes in its 7 a.m. block. Trump tweets 6 minutes later, is Joe Biden's biggest criminal of all time? Check out at Hunter LOLs, right? So this is like a big fictional, romance novel for some person out there. 3 reporters, Dina, Donnie, and Ellen, are contacted by an anonymous Proton Mail account. Dina's document purports to be a ledger. Donnie's document is a 2016 email, and Ellen's document is a board contract between Hunter and Burisma. In Ukraine, Burisma announces there's no evidence of any hack of its kind. The story continues. Day 4, right, the saga. CNN reports, CrowdStrike announces the Biden campaign adopts the Hillary campaign and says it's not going to confirm the veracity of the documents. At Trump's rally, the crowd is shouting, "Lock him up!" President Trump pumps his fists at the crowd and chants, "Mega!" Ah! And then on day 5, Friday, October 9th, another statement's released and signed only by him. The Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, says, at 11 a.m. on the House floor, House Intelligence Chair Adam Schiff says that according to his briefing, the intelligence community is not being forthright. Okay. And it just keeps going on. And then we get to day 7. On the Sunday shows, Biden campaign dismisses the hack and leaks as dirty tricks by Vladimir Putin. And Alex Berenson announces on Twitter that the person is an American. And then we get up to day 11. There's a second presidential debate, right? It's all, it's all just a big fan fiction. Okay. So they're going through this little thing, and it's really amazing that Hunter Biden happens to be the sort of the crux. Hunter Biden is it's the plot point, right? It's the main crux of this whole saga. It starts with Hunter Biden. Very convenient. Now, the organizer was Vivian Schiller, the former CEO of NPR, former head of news at Twitter, former general manager of the New York Times, former chief digital officer of NBC News. Attendees included Meta, Facebook, head of security policy, reporters for the New York Times, and others. They're all here at this little, thing. Role-playing with each other is exactly what they do on a daily basis. By September 20th, mid-September 2020, Chan and Roth, they set up an encrypted messaging network so employees from the FBI and Twitter could communicate. They also agreed to create what's called a, quote, virtual war room for all the internet industry, plus the FBI and the ODNI. Chan sends this letter September 21st, 2020 to Yoel. Elvis writes, "Hi, Yoel. Thanks for the response. I have some additional questions. I'm aware the industry is meeting on this on Friday, so you may not have any clarification until then, but we can discuss this during and after our next scheduled meeting based on what your schedule looks like." He says, all right, if it will only be one-way communication from the U.S. government to the industry, it seems like that should at least be the FBI and CISA. We can give you everything we're seeing from our agencies. CISA will know what's going on in each state via the Homeland Security Information Network. Okay, so Twitter is going to get a pipeline from the U.S. government. U.S. government to the industry, FBI, CISA, everything that we've got from the U.S. intelligence agencies piped right into your door. My gosh, these people. Can you see what that is? Like, this is like just, we're going to give you a ton. What do we expect for that? Do you think that's free? No, it's not free at all. If you want access to the US government feed, we're going to need access to your feed. However, writes Chan, how will the industry partners communicate back with the FBI and CISA? For the FBI, will you use the pre-established channels already in use? For example, you or Angela will email me directly. If that is the case, that will work for the FBI, but I don't know what communication channels you have with CISA. Or will the industry partners rely on the FBI to be the belly button for the US government? I mean, we can do that as well. If you want to send everything to me, then I can farm it out. We just need to know what the industry group's preference is. And number two, it sounds good. We will likely only establish one signal channel for FBI San Francisco and another one for FBI HQ. The FIDIF unit chiefs, the elections integrity people, may want to be on the channel as well. I will provide the companies with our command post shift roster so you can know who is on shift for any given day. And number three, Facebook has mentioned activating the signal channel before the first presidential debate, which works for us. So Facebook's in on it too. I guarantee you YouTube and Google are in on it too. We won't have enhanced staffing levels until October 28th at FBI HQ and October 30th at FBI San Fran. They're busing in all of their agents. I don't think we will stay in enhanced posture though through January, so I think we could revert back to the standard channels sometime later, perhaps after the elections are certified. Regards, Elvis Chan. Yoel responds back with answers to the questions. Hey Elvis, sorry for the delayed response. I've got answers to your 3 questions. Happy to find time this week, or we can check back in on Friday's call. So what will agencies be allowed on the channel? How's the communication going to work? He responds, Yoel says, all right, Elvis, look, the agreed upon parameters for the channel by industry are that it's one-way communication from government to industry. We explicitly do not plan to have a conversation, discussion responses back in this forum. So the U.S. government attendees there, I think, would largely be driven by who FBI wants to share with this setting. I will note, given at least some of the orgs on this list have been somewhat more press happy than others. I worry a bit about the information shared in confidence. Put another way, there might be value in keeping the circle of trust here quite small because everybody's going to talk to the press about this. So in other words, don't talk about it. I also worry about the precedent of expanding it to include organizations which typically aren't present in our meetings. I'm also not entirely sure that every member of the group wants their phone number quite so broadly available. I'd have to run this by the group again. Happy to do so if you think there's value. How many U.S. government participants will be allowed onto the channel? We didn't get into the specifics, but I can't imagine that any of it would be problematic. We discussed the election period, broadly defined. Yeah, and says, yep, happy to continue working with you through January. All right, so more odds and ends there. But then on September 15th, FBI's Laura Demlow, a new player, enters the game, who heads up the Foreign Influence Task Force, and Elvis Chan requests to give a classified briefing for Jim Baker without any other Twitter staff like Yoel Roth present. FBI wants to talk only to FBI. They don't want any other, non-FBIers there. Letter, September 15th. From somebody to Demlow Laura. Hi, Jim and somebody. I hope all is well. Blank, can you help Laura Demlow and Elvis Chan of the FBI schedule a classified briefing for Jim? They would like to meet early next week if possible. So all of that is just now between ex-FBI and current FBI, cutting out the rest of Twitter. That took place September 15th. On October 14th, then, we fast forward about a month later. Shortly after the New York Post publishes its Hunter Biden laptop story, Yoel Roth says in this email the following. October 14th, 2:20, 8:51 in the morning, waking up, bad news. He says, hey, blank, thanks. Yeah, we're aware of this and we're tracking closely. The New York Post story has been published. He says, at this time, given the alleged provenance of the materials, a laptop mysteriously dropped off at a repair shop in Delaware. He says it isn't clearly violative of our hacked materials policy, nor is it clearly a violation of anything else. Dang it. That said, Yoel says the questionable origins here are obviously causing a lot of people to make references to 2016. And my personal view on this, unsubstantiated by hard evidence as of yet, is that this feels a lot like a somewhat subtle leak operation. We'll be developing a recommendation for what, if anything, we want to do over the course of the day today. That comes from Yoel. In response, Baker repeatedly insists the Hunter Biden materials were faked. They were hacked or both, and that they were a violation of policy. Baker is going hog wild. He does so over an email and in a Google Doc. He's like just typing furiously. He's like, rah! So he starts posting this stuff. October 14th, 9:26 a.m. He sends an email over to Yoel. He says, all right, I've got some additional things to say about this. He writes one additional comment. He says, I've seen, and I am ex-FBI, by the way. He says, I've seen some reliable cybersecurity folks question the authenticity of the emails in another way. For example, says that there is no metadata pertaining to them that has been released, and the formatting looks like they could be complete fabrications. Which obviously was not what we saw. And we saw what looked like very good emails. There's another image. This is the Google Doc. He says here, they're typing this together. The document is called New York Post Hunter Biden laptop article, privileged and confidential. All right. Jim Baker and another added some comments. They type in a response. Comments come in from several people on Twitter. We see one person says, if we're getting rid of this link, I'm struggling to understand the policy basis for marking this as unsafe. I think the best explainability argument for this externally would be that we're waiting to see if this story is hacked. We'll face hard questions on this if we don't have some kind of solid reasoning for marking this link as unsafe. Copied Yoel and others. Would we also mark other stories unsafe? Yoel says, all right, listen, I don't want to hear you complainers. Fall in line. He says the policy basis, Yoel, is hacked materials. Though, as discussed, this is an emerging situation where the facts are unclear. Given the severe capitalized risks here and lessons of 2016, we're erring on the side of including a warning and preventing the content from being amplified. So they just put it in its little silo. Vijaya says, well, what's the warning that comes up? Yoel says, when you click the link, you're going to see a generic unsafe URL message. It says like you're clicking spam, you're clicking hacked materials. It's going to the New York Post. Hello. So they're gonna flag them as spam malware. Not ideal, but it's the only thing we have. And he says, Black says, whatever we do in comms, this will become a bias for a claim of against Jack. Let's be clear, we're proactively, cautiously interpreting this, but can we claim that this is part of that policy? Is part of our approach that we're potentially addressing hacked materials? Seems kind of nuts. Baker says, all right. He finally weighs in here. He says, I support the conclusion that we need more facts to assess whether the materials were hacked. At this stage, however, it is reasonable for us to assume that they may have been and that caution is warranted. It's not reasonable at all, Jim. FBI knows it's real. You guys knew it was real from 2019 when you sent the subpoena over to JP at the Mac store. So now Jim Baker, who's ex-FBI, who is working with Elvis Chan at the FBI, who got confidential briefings, presumably from Elvis Chan, who still holds his security clearance, still interfacing with the feds, knows full well that these things aren't hacked. Or he should know. A reasonable person in his position would know. So now he is overlooking it. He is voluntarily ignorant, willfully ignorant of the situation. But he's inside. And now he knows that this story is true and it's coming out. And boy, oh boy, it's going to be bad for Joe Biden. It might throw the entire election. So they stop it. There are some facts that indicates the materials may have been hacked, while there are others indicating the computer was either abandoned and the owner allowed or consented the repair shop to access it. We simply need more information. So he is playing the reasonable cautious FBI agent. We know that he just left the FBI. Jim Baker sends another email. Folks, I'm guessing that we're going to restrict access to this article as a violation of our hack materials policy, but after yesterday, I don't want to assume anything. So he's sending another email on October 15th, this time at 3:44 in the morning. Jim's having a meltdown. He got his marching orders from the FBI. He's over there as an inside mole, continuing his work there, and he's got to bury this story quickly. 3:44 in the morning, he sends an email over to Yoel. Get rid of it. But it's inconceivable, says Schellenberger, that Baker believed the emails were fake and hacked. Obviously, he knew. The New York Post, it had a picture of the receipt signed by Hunter Biden, and they also had a picture of an FBI subpoena that showed the agency had taken possession of the laptop December 2019. So we actually turned the laptop over to them and just kept a copy of the hard drive. So they actually had the physical document, the physical hard drive laptop in their hands. And they didn't communicate that over to their inside top secret security clearance individuals like Yoel. As for the FBI, says Schellenberger, would have taken only a few hours for it to confirm that it was actually his. It only took a few hours for Peter Schweizer to prove it.
And I compare when the laptop dropped in 2020, I had no idea where it came from. I didn't know if it was real. But what I did was I took the files on the Hunter Biden laptop and I compared it to bodies of information that we knew were absolutely true. So, for example, the Secret Service, again at the request of the U.S. Senate committee, had released Hunter Biden's travel records. So we were able to take the laptop and say, when he says he's in Dubai, does that correspond with the Secret Service travel records? If he's emailing somebody and saying, I'm in Hong Kong, does that line up? In each and every case, it lined up.
Yeah.
Then we compared.
They did. Everything was corroborated. Go follow Peter Schweizer, who's obviously doing some amazing work on this, and he'll fill you in on the rest of those 2 minutes. But the story continues. Schellenberger writes, by 10 a.m., Twitter execs had bought into a wild hack and dump story because it fit their endgame. The suggestion from experts, which rings true, is there was a hack that happened separately, and they loaded the hacked materials onto the laptop that magically appeared at a repair shop. Here's what the story from Yoel. Creating this out of thin air should write novels instead of working to censor America. Yoel says October 14th, 10:12 a.m. Hi, folks. Lots of good discussion on this case today in the Google Doc, where they're all typing away. Sharing a bit of additional context about why we're recommending this action, which is to spike the story. Yoel says the key factor in informing our approach is consensus from experts monitoring election security and disinformation. That this looks like a lot like a hack and leak that we learned from the 2016 WikiLeaks approach. The suggestion from experts, Yoel says, which rings true, is that there was a hack that happened separately. Remember, the original story is that Hunter Biden is just a crackhead, and he just dropped his laptop off to be repaired and then went and did crack again and forgot about the laptop. That's it. There was no additional hack. He gave the store owner full permission to access the laptop, and it became abandoned property. He says that here it rings true. The different story is that there was a hack that happened separately, okay? And they loaded the hacked materials on the laptop that magically appeared at the repair shop in Delaware and was, in italics, coincidentally reviewed in a very invasive way by someone who coincidentally then handed the materials to Rudy Giuliani. Given the severe risks we saw in this space in 2016, we're recommending a warning plus de-amplification pending further info. And so this is Yoel. We call this COPE in modern internet vernacular, but this is him trying to sort of explain a situation that is clearly not the reality. He's trying to cope with a bad situation by writing coincidentally in italics. He's trying to cope with his pain from realizing that, man, this is all reality, and he's having to try to paper over that unfortunate fact for him. He says, if additional information emerges that establishes the origins of the materials more conclusively, we could either reverse this action and remove the warning or escalate our enforcement should it cross the line fully into hacked materials. We recognize the product experience of the warning label is less than ideal and will surface that feedback with the experience team again as evidence of why we need a more robust URL management options. Based on the discussion with Vijaya, we'll move forward with this action once we get sign off from comms. That's on October 14th. So, I mean, you can just see this letter looks like it's written by somebody who's advocating, who's making an argument. Okay. He's taking an argumentative position on this. He's saying very coincidentally, Laptop, October, Rudy Giuliani goes against Hunter, and so on. My guess is if you would flip these two political parties and they came across a laptop from Don Jr., the story would have been different and Yoel would have had a different opinion because he's a partisan hack, not a neutral moderator. Schellenberger says, at 3:38 p.m. that same day, October 15th, Baker arranges a phone call with Matthew Perry in the Office of General Counsel at the FBI. This is the notice of the meeting, October 14th, between Jim and Matt. They use first names. They say the influence operation persuaded Twitter executives that Hunter Biden laptop did not come from a whistleblower. One linked to a Hill article based on a WAPO article from October 15th, which falsely suggested that Giuliani's leak of the laptop had something to do with Russia. All right. So now they're all poisoning the pot. They're all inserting Russia, and they're doing this copy and paste thing that we've criticized a lot here. Okay. One person. They just need one person to dangle a little bit of evidence, and then they just copy and paste, and it just goes like dominoes throughout the entire media ecosphere. Okay, New York Times says something, whether it's true or not, like, Brian Sicknick was killed, right, by the rioters, by the insurrectionists. What do you know? One person writes it. Then all the copy and pasters, all the journos out there, they got their fingers, they're just like copy, paste, blah, 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 boom. And they're just copy and pasting their own articles and then republishing them. Same thing happened here. So they say it's a Russian operation or something. You see a couple pictures here. The Hill says the intelligence officials warned Trump that Giuliani was the target of Russian influence campaign. So it's that, poor Giuliani is now a victim and the data that he got is just bad. So it's poisoning the pot of the data. There's also another article that came out from the Washington Post. White House was warned that Giuliani was the target to feed misinformation to Trump. Okay, all of that, of course, was fictional nonsense. And there's an email here from Nick Pickles. Nick Pickles sent this email October 16th, just a couple days after the release. They write, the current policy, we can't see the title, the subject is privileged hack materials updates, whether they are a source of truth. So Nick Pickles sends a letter over to several people. In the email, he writes, the current policy is anchored in, quote, attempts to compromise or infiltrate computer systems. We'd have to be feeling pretty vindictive to say whistleblowers or dissidents were malicious. And so malicious purposes, like is just whistleblowing, is that a malicious purpose? So our current policy sort of feels like it's outside of the hula hoop on that. And Nick says, plus, isn't the issue with whistleblowers and data theft rather than hacking? He says, so Snowden was charged under espionage. Assange was charged under computer fraud and abuse. This does point to the question of whether we should have a factor in the policy relating to the proximity and critical events and so on. But Nick says, I'd also note the seemingly well-timed briefings from the government sources highlighting concerns about the source of the hard drive, which would support an assessment that it's neither whistleblower or dissident content. Okay? So this highlighted red box is making the point that the government had persuaded them. The government had already convinced them that this was going to be coming. And when it came, they said, oh, well, there you go. Government was briefing us. They said it was going to happen. Now it's happened. So it encouraged them to not categorize this type of stuff as whistleblower or dissident content, which may have been protected because the FBI said no. Schellenberger continues. He says there is evidence that FBI agents have warned elected officials of foreign influence with the primary goal of leaking information to the news media. So they're not actually concerned about the bad information. They're warning about the election to election officials, but the goal is to convince the media to do something about it. Schellenberger says this is a political dirty trick used to create the perception of impropriety. In 2020, the FBI gave a briefing to Senators Grassley and Johnson, claiming evidence of, quote, Russian interference into their investigations of Hunter. The briefing angered the senators, who say it was done to discredit their investigation. It's true, and we've read most of Grassley's letters. The unnecessary FBI briefing provided the Democrats and liberal media the vehicle to spread their false narrative that worked to advance Russian disinformation. This letter said, with respect to the substance of the briefing, This is Grassley responding, saying it consisted primarily of information that we already knew and information unconnected to our investigation. We've made clear to you at the briefing that it was not relevant to the substance of our work. In response, you stated that the FBI is not attempting to quash, curtail, or interfere with any investigation in any way. Grassley says we also made clear our concern that the briefing would be subject to a leak that could shed a false light on the focus of our investigation. On May 1, the Washington Post did exactly that. So did other inaccurate media articles during the course of our investigation, which also falsely labeled our investigation as advancing Russian disinformation. Yeah, so Grassley, right? Grassley and Johnson have been pounding the table on this for a long time. We've read most of these letters. The FBI openly snubs their nose at these two guys. I mean, Chuck Grassley and Ron Johnson, they were there when Christopher Wray was sitting there looking at them in the eye, and they said, okay, we've got more questions. We'll see you here back after lunch. Christopher Wray said, what? I've got a plane to catch. What are you talking about? And he literally left that afternoon. He told the Senate, we're done here. They've sent him dozens of letters. He ignores all of them because they're the FBI. They're really running things. And if they don't like what you're asking, they'll actually in sort of impugn you and your credibility and saying, you're also advancing Russian disinformation. Schellenberger says that notably, the former FBI general counsel, Jim Baker, who was there at the FBI at the time, was investigated twice in 2017 and 2019 for leaking information to the news. This was the whole MO. This is exactly what Michael Sussman was doing. Jim Baker knew that. I would argue that Jim Baker was in on it with Michael Sussman. Sussman went to Baker, said, we've got the Trump PP tape. Sussman went to the Washington Post and said, the FBI has the Trump PP tape. He told the FBI, the WAPO has the Trump PP tape and they're going to run it. They're playing both sides. He was investigated previously, had to leave the FBI because he got too hot even for them. You're saying he's under criminal investigation? That's why you're not letting him answer? Meadows asked. Yes, because he's under investigation. Schellenberger tells us that in the end, the FBI's influence campaign aimed at executives at news media, Twitter, and other social media companies. It worked. They censored and discredited the Hunter Biden laptop story. By December 2020, Baker and his colleagues even sent a note of thanks to the FBI for their great work. Hey, you guys are doing an awesome job censoring Americans. You can see the whole chain here. First letter comes out Thursday, December 10th. Hey, Sean and Jim, election's over. I hope all is well. The election has taken up our lives for most of the year, but certainly the past few months. Twitter was on the front line of protecting our users and the public at large from misinformation and disinformation. See, it's kind of a weird widescreen format here. What is not widely known is the role Twitter played in helping the FBI track and identify violent actors who wanted to perpetrate acts of domestic terrorism at polling stations. Obviously, this work as well, helping us deal with elections. They say that we had an unprecedented national security and law enforcement response. It was the result of a well-coordinated team. This is all coming from Elvis Chan. No, this is coming from, I don't know who this is coming from. They're all celebrating themselves. Twitter provided information about the kidnapping plot of the governors, as well as QAnon members who drove. And here's a list of all the agents that we worked with. Elvis Chan, Laura Demlow, a bunch of other FBI agents. There's a whole list of them here. Intelligence analysts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people just thanked in this chain. FIDIF Russia unit, all in the Russia unit. Right, all these people just playing patty cake with themselves. And so this letter goes, it says, thank you so much, Sean. Please let me know if you'd like me to draft the letter. If you'd like to draft it, I'd appreciate it. Thanks, Angela. I'll sign it as well. Would Scale please prepare a draft to look at? Thanks, Jim. Right, so Jim's letter of appreciation for the FBI. They're thanking the FBI because they're super buddies. Schellenberger tells us the FBI's influence campaign may have been helped by the fact that it was paying Twitter millions of dollars for its staff time. You're kidding me. I'm happy to report that we collected $3.4 million since October 19, reports an associate of Jim Baker in 2021. Unbelievable. Run the business dash we made money exclamation point. Letter comes from Safety, Content, and Law Enforcement team, which is the SCALE team, Safety, Content, and Law Enforcement. Hey, Jim, FYI, in 2019, SCALE instituted a reimbursement program for our legal process response from the FBI. Prior to the start of the program, Twitter chose not to collect under the statutory right of reimbursement for the time spent processing requests from the FBI. But I'm happy to report now that since we enrolled in the program, we collected $3.4 million since October 2019. This money is used by LP for things like TTR and other LE projects like training and tooling, etc. So making big money, $3.4 million as well. And the pressure from the FBI on social media continues. August 2022, Twitter executives prepared a meeting for the FBI whose goals were to convince us to produce more FBI emergency disclosure requests, aka a warrantless search. So Twitter just keeps going, right? They're saying, oh, perfect, FBI wants more. Let's get more. Here's the email. August 25th, 2022. This email says, Team, I had an advanced prep call today from so-and-so of the FBI for your 9/6 meeting with them. Here are some key takeaways. Attending on the FBI side will be so-and-so, plus people from the NTOC and perhaps others from the violent crimes. Their goal of the meeting is to help us produce more FBI emergency disclosures. They will try to do this by having the FBI educate us on the threats they're seeing, their procedures, the processes, what their standards are. They plan on bringing on statistics. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, so the FBI is telling Twitter they plan on bringing statistics on our rate of compliance, which they labeled variable, and several forehead knockers, situations where in the FBI view there is no reason why we would have not complied. This is one of the most disgusting things you've ever seen. This is the FBI literally commandeering Twitter. Okay, this is the team from Twitter. These bullets make it seem like this is going to be a confrontational meeting, which I do not think it will be. Instead, I get the feeling that they're genuinely baffled and frustrated by their rate of success, as they say, is so low at Twitter. So the FBI wants to know why they're not just complying automatically. They're going to be monitoring their compliance. And they want to specifically label things where they think there's basically no reason for the FBI to have denied, or Twitter to have denied the FBI. They repeatedly emphasize Twitter's lower level of compliance in comparison with other platforms. I kindly emphasize back that repeatedly stressing that to our team is not going to be a good strategy to move the needle in their direction. So stop comparing us to your cooperation with Facebook and with Google. On our side, I think it could be helpful to have some statistics at our fingerprint tips about how the FBI has a far and away greater rate of production than anyone else. It might also be helpful to get a sense of the reasons we are denying their request. Matt suggested that it's our high requirement of imminence. I expect our team is going to push back on this. He says, I realize no one has no time to do anything extra. I just think it's good to do a little digging on our side before our meeting. It's disgusting. It is the FBI grading them. You better perform well. You better give 100% or else we're going to monitor you. They're taking over the company, right? Essentially. In response to the Twitter files and the revelation of high-level FBI agents at Twitter, Jim Jordan said something about this. He said, I have concerns about whether the government was running a misinformation operation on we the people. Schellenberger says, anyone who reads the Twitter files, regardless of their political orientation, should share those concerns. And yeah, it is a pretty amazing thing that this happened so openly and so nakedly. That is the end of Twitter Files 7. But I think that there is ample opportunity to once again consider this statute, 18 U.S. Code 241, conspiracy against rights. If two or more persons conspire to oppress the free exercise or the enjoyment of any right or privilege secured by the Constitution or laws of the United States, that person shall be imprisoned not more than 10 years. And I think that is worthy of being looked into. If they're going to be charging people with seditious conspiracy, and they're going to be charging people with all sorts of other crimes, this one is obvious. That, my friends, is Twitter Files 7. And of course, we will continue to cover these as they drop. Thank you for joining us as we do. Don't forget to support our law firm at rrlawaz.com. And I'll look forward to seeing you on the next one, my friends.